My name's Alex. I'm 32, and I've always been the easygoing one in the family. I'm the middle child between two siblings. My older brother Mark, the golden boy, and my younger sister Emily, the golden girl. I guess that made me the silver spoon, presentable enough, but not the first pick for anything important. Growing up, Mark could do no wrong. He once crashed my dad's car into a ditch, blamed it on slippery roads, and got off with a pat on the back. When I accidentally dropped a glass at dinner, I got a week of icy silence and a sarcastic classic Alex from Mom. That pretty much set the tone for everything that followed. So when Mark got engaged to Lisa, the most high-maintenance woman I've ever met, I didn't expect a warm welcome. Lisa comes from a family that thinks middle class is a slur. The first time we met, she looked at my shoes and asked if they were vintage or just worn out. I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. Every time we interacted after that, there was a flicker of disdain behind her forced smiles. Still, I kept my distance. I figured she and Mark deserved each other, two people obsessed with optics, appearances, and Instagrammable moments. They loved the idea of love, as long as it got likes. The wedding planning was a circus from the start. I offered to help. Mark said, "We've got it covered." I sent them a thoughtful engagement gift. Nothing too flashy, just a framed photo of our grandparents' wedding day, something sentimental. Lisa texted back, "Ah, thanks. We'll find a place for it. Maybe in the basement, lol." I didn't reply. I just mentally shifted the budget I'd set aside for their wedding gift towards something less personal, more transactional. If I was just an obligation, I'd treat it like one too. 3 weeks before the wedding, Mom called me. "Just wear something formal. Don't overthink it. And be polite to Lisa's family, please." That last part had weight to it, like she expected me to be a problem. I bit my tongue. "Sure," I said. "Wouldn't miss it." And I wouldn't. Not because I was excited, but because I had a promise to keep. I told Dad years ago, back when he was sick, that I'd always be there for family milestones. He made me repeat it while we sat in the hospital waiting room after another round of chemo. "Even if you're treated like a ghost," he'd said with a tired smile. "Especially then." So I showed up. The venue was a picturesque vineyard, the kind you only see in magazines or Hallmark movies. String lights everywhere, live quartet playing soft classical music, people dressed like they were auditioning for a perfume commercial. I arrived early, found the coordinator, and asked where I was sitting. She glanced at the list, frowned, then motioned me toward the back of the reception tent. "Table? Actually, you're near the fire exit. It's that chair right there." I followed her finger. It wasn't even a table, just a folding chair. Alone, tucked between a fake potted tree and a red exit sign. No place card, no table number, no name, just there. I stood still for a second, thinking it was a mistake, that someone would run over, apologizing, maybe offering me a seat somewhere real. But no one came. People were arriving in waves, smiles, hugs, cheers. I spotted Emily and Mom near the head table, laughing with Mark. I raised a hand. Emily waved half-heartedly. Mom didn't even acknowledge me. I try not to take it personally. Tried. That's when Lisa walked by, flanked by 2 bridesmaids. She saw me standing next to the folding chair and smirked. "Oh, you found your seat," she said, then gave me this once-over, like I was a thrift store donation. "Only real family gets a real table." I blinked. "Excuse me." She didn't even stop walking. "Don't take it personally," she said over her shoulder. "It's just space was tight." I stood there for another full minute, heartbeat loud in my ears. The envelope in my pocket felt heavier than ever. It was a gift card, but not just any gift card. $1, $500 to a luxury spa resort. Something they mentioned in passing during the engagement party. "It's the only way to unwind after planning a wedding," Lisa had said, massaging her temples dramatically. I kept the card in an envelope with a handwritten note that said, "Enjoy a peaceful honeymoon," on me. But I didn't hand it over. I pulled the envelope out of my coat, looked at it for a moment, then tucked it back in. I turned around, walked toward the front of the tent, and as I passed the champagne table, I said just loud enough, "Enjoy the honeymoon while it lasts." A few people turned to look. My mom hissed, "Don't make a scene." Her eyes were hard, like she was already preparing her speech about how I ruined the day. But I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I just smiled, because I already had a plan. A quiet, subtle, slow-burn plan. I didn't leave immediately. I wanted to stay long enough to plant the seed. I made my way to the open bar and ordered a soda, casually sipping while watching the chaos swirl around the bride and groom. Lisa was glowing, for now circling from one curated photo opportunity to the next. Mark looked a little overwhelmed, but he always did when he didn't have a script to follow. The photographer shouted directions, the bridal party flitted around adjusting bouquets and reapplying lipstick, and I just stood there like a shadow no one noticed. Well, almost no one. My cousin Sarah, the only person in our family with a functioning emotional radar, found me by the bar. "Hey," she said, giving me that look, half sympathy, half, "I'd burn this place down with you if you said the word. I just heard from the coordinator where they stuck you." "Folding chair by the fire exit," I said, raising my glass in mock salute. "Real classy." Her face twisted. "You didn't deserve that." "No," I agreed, "but I've learned not to expect much." We talked for a few minutes, mostly small things, until I spotted the DJ starting to set up. That was my cue. I nodded toward the reception tent. "You might want to keep your phone ready later," I said. Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Should I be worried?" I smiled. "Not unless you're a fan of Lisa's curated reality." She didn't ask questions. She just grinned. "Text me if you need backup." I slipped away before dinner was served. No one noticed. Not Mark, not Mom, not even Lisa, who was too busy adjusting her hair while someone took a video of her twirling under a chandelier. My car was parked down the gravel drive, past a little security booth and a line of catering vans. I sat behind the wheel for a minute, pulled out my phone, and opened the folder I'd been building for 3 months. It started small screenshots, mostly. Text from Lisa to the wedding planner, berating her for minor issues like using too many beige napkins. A few social media posts from Lisa's private Instagram account, where she mocked Mark's mom, our mom, for being dull as toast. I had copies of emails she accidentally CC'd me on when she meant to talk trash about the deadweight relatives, me included. But the real gem was a voice memo. A short, bitter rant she recorded after her bridal shower, where she called Mark a temporary phase and bragged about how his money was just her starter husband fund. She had sent it to one of her bridesmaids as a joke. That bridesmaid, Amanda, happened to also be friends with my ex, who happened to also be sick of Lisa's games. And that memo? Let's just say it had a date stamp, a clean audio file, and just enough venom to make even the most diehard wedding guest blink twice. I'd been sitting on it, debating for weeks what to do with it. At first, I wanted to be the bigger person. Let Mark figure it out himself. But then the folding chair, the missing name card, the look Lisa gave me like I was gum on her shoe. And my mom, my own mother, not even flinching. That's what made up my mind. I uploaded the audio file to a burner email. Then I created a group message. Not to everyone, just enough to start a ripple. Mark, a few of his groomsmen, Amanda, Sarah, a handful of Lisa's cousins who looked uncomfortable every time she spoke, and one particular recipient who would be the real accelerant, Lisa's ex-boyfriend, who, fun fact, she'd met up with just 6 weeks ago at a girls' trip in Vegas. I included a short note. Since I wasn't invited to speak at the reception, I figured I'd share my toast here. Congrats. I hit send. Closed the app. Then I drove home. The next morning, I woke up to 12 missed calls, 38 text messages, and a voicemail from my mom that started with, "What did you do?" and ended with, "You better fix this, Alex." I didn't listen to the rest. Instead, I made coffee, opened my laptop, and sat down to read the fallout. The group chat had exploded. Amanda had forwarded the memo to even more people. Someone uploaded it to a wedding gossip subreddit. It was already trending. A screenshot of Lisa's Instagram, where she'd posted best day ever, was being stitched into memes alongside quotes from the memo. My favorite read, "Starter husband fund?" Sounds like a limited time offer. But the real kicker? Mark hadn't posted a single thing. Not a photo. Not a thank you. Not even a "married life begins" status update. Just radio silence. By noon, Sarah texted me they canceled the post-wedding brunch. Apparently, Lisa locked herself in the hotel bathroom. Mark's at his buddy's house. He looks like he's been hit by a truck. I didn't reply, because I wasn't finished yet. There was one more thing I had up my sleeve. I gave it a day. Not because I was nervous, honestly. I'd never felt calmer, but because the silence was louder than any confrontation I could have staged. No angry text from Mark. No backpedaling apologies from Lisa. Not even a half-hearted, "We need to talk" from Mom. Just this strange vacuum, like everyone was pretending I didn't exist, which, ironically, was how they'd been treating me for years. Only this time, it wasn't on their terms. By the second evening, the cracks were starting to show. Sarah called me. Not a text, a full-on call, which was rare for her. I answered and heard her exhale like she'd been waiting all day to vent. "Okay, you need to know what's happening." "How do you too?" I said, half smiling. "No, seriously," she said. "It's like implosion levels of drama." Apparently, someone had sent the voice memo to Lisa's extended family WhatsApp group. Her aunt, the one who paid for half the wedding flowers, was not amused. Her parents had already been lukewarm about Mark. Now they were embarrassed that their perfect daughter had broadcast her marriage as a financial strategy. Lisa tried to spin it as taken out of context, but the audio had her laughing and saying, "I'll keep him around until the condo finishes construction. Then it's whatever. He's sweet, but I'm not building a future with that." Yeah, real charming. Meanwhile, Mark, who had always lived in denial when it came to Lisa's red flags, was reeling. According to Sarah, he hadn't gone home after the wedding. He stayed at his groomsman Ryan's place and had apparently spent most of Monday pacing the living room, phone in hand, muttering things like, "Was it always like this?" and "How did I miss this?" I'll admit, I didn't feel good about him hurting. He's my brother. We weren't close, but still, I didn't want to destroy him. I just wanted him to finally see what I'd seen all along, that Lisa didn't love him, that Mom never really protected me, that I'd been used as a prop, a reliable wallet and background character at best. But I hadn't even gotten to the last part of my plan. See, the spa gift card? I didn't cancel it. I redirected it. A week before the wedding, I transferred it into a reservation under a different name. A woman Lisa worked with, someone she hated. Her co-worker Jasmine, the one Lisa had once called a try-hard social climber who always wears knockoff bags. I'd heard the story at a family dinner where Lisa dominated the table, venting about office politics as if everyone else lived under rocks. Jasmine, according to Lisa, had once dared to ask if she could split a group lunch bill with her. So when I called the spa and changed the recipient name to Jasmine W. plus guest, I knew what I was doing. Lisa would have no idea until she called to schedule the appointment, which, according to Sarah, happened the morning after the brunch was canceled. "Lisa, hi. Yes, I'd like to confirm a reservation for a couple's massage. It's under. Wait. What do you mean it's already been claimed? Who's Jasmine? Are you kidding me?" I could practically hear the glass shattering on the other end. That little twist? That wasn't revenge. That was artistry. Later that evening, Mom finally called. I let it ring twice before picking up. Her voice was sharp, tight with embarrassment. "You had no right to sabotage your brother's wedding like that." I leaned back in my chair. Didn't realize I was invited to it. "Don't be clever, Alex." I wasn't trying to be. Just accurate. She sighed like she always did when I wasn't playing along. "You don't know what it's like to hold a family together." "No," I said quietly, "because I've spent my whole life being told I'm not really part of it." She paused. I could hear the static of her silence stretching between us. "You made a scene," she said finally. "No," I replied. "You made a scene when you watched me sit alone by the fire exit and didn't say a word. I just turned on the lights." I hung up before she could answer. Later that week, Sarah sent me a screenshot of Lisa's Instagram. The wedding photos were gone. Every single one. Her account was suddenly full of beach quotes, yoga poses, and vague captions like "healing isn't linear" and "sometimes growth means letting go." Mark's account, on the other hand, hadn't been touched. Still radio silence. But I wasn't done watching. Because while the fallout had started publicly, the real unraveling was still happening behind closed doors. Mark had decisions to make. Lisa had explanations to give. And Mom, well, she was going to have to sit with the discomfort of a son who finally said no. But none of them knew the last part of what I'd set in motion. Not yet. Because Lisa's ex-boyfriend? The one she saw in Vegas? Yeah, he messaged me. Turns out he had his own receipts. Photos. Flight stubs. A hotel confirmation email with Lisa's name and his, dated for the exact weekend she told Mark she was reconnecting with her bridesmaids. And I had a feeling Mark would want to see them. But not in a vindictive way. Not anymore. Because sometimes, the best kind of revenge isn't loud. It isn't cruel. It's just the truth shown at the right time, in the right way. And now that the wedding lights had dimmed, the music faded, and the rented fairy tale turned back into dust, it was finally the right time. I waited exactly one more week. Not because I was stalling, but because some things need time to sink in. And Mark? He wasn't someone who could process betrayal overnight. He was the kind of guy who needed space, quiet, and a push. I knew my brother. He lived his life believing in the best-case scenario. The fairy tale. The glossy surface. That if you smiled for the photos and said the right things, the rest would figure itself out. But this wasn't something he could ignore. Not when every word in that voice memo played like a warning he never heard until it was too late. Not when the person he married, who had sworn to love him, was outed as someone who laughed about him behind closed doors. And not when the people who stood by and watched it happen finally stopped protecting the illusion. On a rainy Thursday morning, Mark texted me. It was short. Need to talk. Can I come over? I stared at the screen for a second before replying, yeah, anytime. When he showed up, he looked like a man who'd run a marathon without ever realizing he'd started one. Drenched, pale, with bags under his eyes and a crumpled hoodie that didn't match the crisp, curated version of him Lisa used to polish like a trophy. He stepped into my apartment without a word, didn't take off his shoes, didn't sit. He just stood there, dripping. I didn't know, he said quietly. I know. He rubbed the back of his neck like he used to when we were kids and got caught sneaking out. It's not an excuse. I didn't want to know. I nodded. That's how you kept surviving. He sat down on the edge of my couch like it might disappear under him. I listened to the whole recording 5 times. Then I looked through our messages. Read some of the stuff you sent over the years. Things I brushed off. Dismissed. He paused, then looked at me. You were always the only one telling the truth. I didn't respond right away. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because the weight of those words finally meant something. For the first time in maybe a decade, my brother saw me. Not as a backup. Not as a guest in his perfect life. But as a person. His brother. The one he forgot to fight for. She said I embarrassed her, he muttered. That I wasn't ambitious enough to match her image. That she only went through with the wedding because she didn't want to start over. He laughed, but it wasn't funny. She said all that before we even said, I do. He fell silent, then asked, was I really that blind? I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. You weren't blind, Mark. You were just scared of what you'd see. He sat there for a long time, then finally looked up. I called a lawyer. I raised an eyebrow. She was smart, he continued. She didn't put her name on my condo, but she did set up some shared accounts. One of her bridesmaids told me she planned to drain it slowly over a few months. I had them frozen. Lawyers drawing up an annulment. I blinked. That fast? He smiled grimly. Turns out it's easier when the marriage is barely legal and the proof of fraud is overwhelming. There was a pause. Then he asked the question I didn't expect. Why did you wait so long to do anything? I looked him straight in the eye. Because I wanted you to figure it out yourself. He nodded slowly. But you didn't wait forever. No, I said. Because eventually, you crossed a line. Or maybe she did. Maybe Mom did. I don't know. All I know is when I sat down in that folding chair by the fire exit, something snapped. And I realized I'd been giving pieces of myself to people who wouldn't even give me a seat at the table. Mark winced, and I could see the shame creeping into his expression. I'm sorry, Alex, he said, voice cracking. For that. For all of it. For letting her treat you like that. For letting me treat you like that. I didn't say it's okay. Because it wasn't. But I did say thanks. And for us? That was enough. We sat in silence for a while. The rain tapped against the windows like it had something to say but couldn't find the words either. Mark eventually stood, wiping his face with his sleeve. She's moving out of the apartment tomorrow, he said. Didn't even fight it. Just asked if she could keep the espresso machine. I laughed. Let her. She's going to need all the caffeine she can get if she wants to start over with nothing but Instagram quotes and her pride. He cracked a real smile at that. Before he left, he turned at the door. You know, I don't think I ever told you how much Dad trusted you. I raised an eyebrow. He told me once, Mark continued, that if anything ever happened to him, you'd be the one who kept this family honest. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Too bad no one listened, I said. We're listening now, Mark replied. When the door closed behind him, I exhaled deeply. Not out of relief, exactly, but because the years of being overlooked, dismissed, and treated like furniture at my own family's events had finally been acknowledged. Not fixed, not undone, but seen. 3 days later, Mom called again. This time, she didn't scold me. She didn't defend Lisa. She didn't even ask me to apologize. She asked if I wanted to come over for dinner. Just the two of us. I almost said no. But something told me this wasn't about obligation. It wasn't about smoothing things over for show. It was maybe her way of realizing how much she'd ignored the son who never demanded attention but always showed up anyway. So I said yes, not to make peace, but to set new terms. At dinner, she didn't bring up Lisa, or the wedding, or even the voice memo. She just said, "I'm sorry I didn't notice." I looked at her for a long time, then said, "I noticed you didn't." And she nodded. That was the start of something better. Mark filed for annulment 2 weeks later. Lisa didn't contest it. The fallout on social media was glorious: cryptic posts, deleted comments, and a mysteriously vanished wedding highlight reel. Her starter husband fund dried up faster than she could refresh her browser, and within a month, she was back living with her parents, applying for brand deals that didn't exist. I sent her a final gift, a tiny, folding chair, with a note, "Only real family gets a real table. Wishing you all the best." She blocked me, obviously, but I wasn't looking for closure from her. The closure came in the form of a quiet Sunday brunch, just me, Mark, and Sarah at a cafe downtown. We laughed about the voice memo, caught up on life, and most importantly, talked like actual equals. Like family. The kind that sees you. The kind that saves you a seat, and not by the fire exit. This time, I sat at the center, and it finally felt like I belonged there. Hey, this is my first time posting, and I'm not sure if I'll even get any replies, but I need to get this off my chest. This all happened a few years ago, but I still can't shake the feeling of betrayal. Maybe you all can help me understand if I was in the wrong, but I honestly think I'm owed a little justice for what went down. So, here's the setup. My name is Jess, and I come from a pretty normal family. Mom, Dad, and my younger brother, Alex. Like most families, we had our share of squabbles over the years, but nothing too serious. That is, until the whole issue with our late grandfather's house came up. Grandpa passed away when I was in my early 20s, and he left behind this small, but charming house. It wasn't anything special, certainly not a mansion, but it was cozy, had a good amount of space, and it felt like it could be home. The only problem was, no one was living there. Grandpa had been living alone in the house for years, and now that he was gone, it just sat there, empty and waiting for someone to take it. I didn't think much about it at first. It was just a house, right? But then, out of nowhere, Alex, my younger brother, announced he was moving into Grandpa's place. No biggie, I thought. He could use the space, and I wasn't exactly in a position to need it at the time. At that point, I was living with some friends, just trying to get by after a rough breakup. But as time passed, I realized I could really use a place of my own, somewhere quiet to regroup, get a little peace and space. So, I did what anyone would do. I asked my parents if I could stay at Grandpa's house for a while. I wasn't asking for a permanent spot, just a temporary place while I got my life back on track. I was already feeling a little awkward about it, because Alex had just moved in. But it's not like I was asking for his room. I'd be fine with the extra room or even the guest bedroom. I figured it wouldn't hurt to ask, right? I'll never forget the moment I brought it up to my parents. It was a Sunday afternoon, and we were all sitting in the living room. I was feeling a bit nervous because I knew Alex was already settled in there, but I figured my parents would see it as a reasonable request. "Hey, Mom, Dad," I started, my voice a little tentative. "I've been thinking, do you think I could stay at Grandpa's house for a little while? I could really use a place to crash until I get back on my feet. I'll help with anything, like taking care of the place or doing the lawn work." There was a pause. My mom looked at me for a second, but instead of the usual warmth in her expression, there was this almost flatness. It was hard to put my finger on it first, but something was off. My dad was sitting there too, half paying attention, his eyes glued to his phone as always. He didn't even look up when I spoke. Mom sighed, then looked at Dad, like she was waiting for him to say something. When he didn't, she finally spoke. "No, Jess, that's not going to work." I froze for a second. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's Alex's place now," she said, almost dismissively. "He's the one who's staying there. You need to figure something else out." I could feel my chest tighten. It was one thing to hear that from my brother, but coming from my mom? And Dad just sat there, staring at his phone, acting like I wasn't even talking. I didn't know what to say. My mouth went dry, and I tried to keep my cool. "I don't need to stay forever, just for a little while. I'd be really careful, I promise. It's just temporary while I get back on track." My mom's face didn't soften. She crossed her arms, leaning back in her chair. "No, Jess, it's not happening." "But why? What's the big deal?" I pressed, genuinely confused. This was family, right? I thought we were supposed to help each other out. My dad finally looked up from his phone. It's Alex's house now. You should be more independent. I blinked, feeling the sting of his words. It wasn't like I wasn't trying to be independent. I just needed a little help, a little space to breathe. But no, this was apparently where the line was drawn. But you let Alex stay there. Why not me? I asked, my voice a little sharper than I meant. My mom's gaze hardened, like I'd said something I shouldn't have. Alex needs it, Jess. He's been struggling with things, and we've already told you, you need to handle your own stuff. Don't ask for special treatment. The words felt like a slap in the face. Alex is struggling? I repeated, my voice shaky now. What about me? I've been struggling too. But apparently, I don't matter enough for a little help. The room went silent for a few moments, and I could feel the tension in the air. My parents didn't seem to care about the situation. They just sat there, as if I was being unreasonable. And Alex? Well, of course, when I mentioned it to him later, he laughed. You really think I'm going to let you move in here? He asked, snickering. No way, Jess. It's my place now. Figure it out. So, after that, I tried to put it out of my mind. It wasn't easy, but I had no choice. I couldn't just sit around begging for a place to stay. I had to make things work, so I moved into a tiny studio apartment that I could barely afford. It was cramped, but it was mine, and I didn't have to rely on anyone. But as much as I hated the situation, the bitterness stayed with me. Every time I saw my parents or Alex, I couldn't shake the feeling that they had abandoned me. I was the one who needed a hand up, not Alex, who had been living rent-free in a house he didn't even care about, acting like it was his personal palace. But they all kept defending him. He's in a rough spot, my mom would say whenever I brought it up. You'll figure it out, Jess. And Alex? Well, he wasn't shy about rubbing it in. He'd send me texts every now and then, bragging about how his life was so much easier with the house. He'd even throw in a comment here or there about how nice it was not to have to pay rent. It was like he knew how much it bothered me and he loved it. He was playing some twisted game, and I was the punchline. Things dragged on like that for months. I got a second job, started hustling to cover rent, and tried to keep my head down. But it was hard not to feel like my parents had picked a side. I'd overhear them talking about Alex's bright future and how he was really getting his act together. Meanwhile, they'd give me these forced pep talks, telling me that I just needed to work harder. I guess they thought I'd get over it, but I didn't. I was tired of being the one they only remembered when they needed something. One evening, about a year after the whole "no, you can't stay at Grandpa's house" incident, I was out grabbing dinner when I got a call from my mom. I didn't even want to pick it up, but I did. "Jess, honey, we need to talk," she said, her voice oddly serious. I felt a little jolt of anxiety. My parents had never called me this late unless something was up. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to sound calm. "Well, we've been talking, and we have a situation," she said slowly, dragging out every word. "We're in a bit of a financial bind, and we could really use your help. It's important." I sat up straighter. This sounded off. They'd never asked me for help before. Not like this. "Okay, what kind of help are we talking about?" I asked, already dreading the answer. "Your dad and I need to borrow some money," she said, not even bothering to sugarcoat it. "We've had some unexpected expenses come up, and we were hoping you could loan us a couple thousand, just until we can get things sorted." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My mouth went dry. Here I was, struggling to make rent, still getting by on a shoestring budget, and they wanted me to give them money? The same people who had turned me away when I needed them? I was quiet for a moment, not sure what to say. "You want me to give you money?" I repeated, feeling the heat rise in my chest. "After everything? After you told me to figure it out when I needed help? Now you want to borrow from me?" There was an awkward silence on the other end of the line before my mom spoke again. "Look, Jess, we're not asking for much, and we're family. We've helped you before, and now it's your turn to help us." The audacity. She really thought I'd just roll over and help them after everything that happened? I could feel my heart pounding in my ears. I wanted to tell her no. I wanted to hang up the phone and let them deal with their own mess, just like they had told me to do when I was struggling. But there was something inside me that snapped. Maybe it was the anger, or maybe it was just the sheer injustice of the situation. "Actually," I said, my voice calm but sharp, "I think I've helped enough already." "What are you talking about?" she asked, confused. "I've been helping myself for the past year," I said, feeling a little more confident now. "You made it clear that I wasn't worth helping. You told me to figure it out, so that's what I did. I didn't get a place to crash. I didn't get a handout. And now, you want me to bail you out." My mom's tone shifted from pleading to defensive. Jess, this is different. We're family. You should understand that. I do understand, I said, a bit of a bitter chuckle slipping out. I understand that when it was my turn, I was supposed to figure it out on my own. And now that it's your turn, you're coming to me. Well, I'm going to do the same thing you did. Figure it out. I could hear her sputtering, but I wasn't done yet. And as for the money, I think I'll be keeping it for myself, just in case I ever need to figure something out again. The silence on the other end was almost deafening. I could almost picture her speechless, not knowing what to say to that. And then, just before I hung up, I added one final line. Maybe you should have helped me when you had the chance. The silence lingered for what felt like an eternity before my mom finally spoke again. But this time, her voice had lost the pleading tone. It was colder, sharper. Well, fine. If you don't want to help, then we'll just have to figure it out ourselves. I heard the sound of her taking a breath, probably trying to compose herself. But don't think this is the last time we're going to ask. You're still family, Jess. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to feel guilty, but honestly, all I felt was a quiet sense of relief. I had finally stood up for myself. Yeah, well, good luck, I said before I ended the call, my hand shaking slightly as I put the phone down. That night, I didn't sleep much. It wasn't because I felt bad. I didn't. It was because I felt powerful. I had said no. I had taken control of the situation. For once, I wasn't the one on the receiving end of their expectations. For once, I made the rules. The next few days were tense, though. My mom and dad didn't call or text me, which felt weird. I was used to their constant check-ins or their passive-aggressive guilt trips. But now, nothing. It was like I had vanished from their radar, and it was exactly what I needed. I didn't want to deal with their drama anymore. Alex, on the other hand, wasn't as silent. He texted me the day after that conversation. Mom and Dad said you're being stubborn, he wrote. I don't get it. Why can't you just help them out like they helped you? I stared at the text for a while before responding, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Help them out? Like how? By letting them control me again? I don't think so. He replied almost immediately. Wow, Jess. I'm just saying. They've been there for you. You should be there for them now. I wanted to scream, to tell him exactly what I thought of him and his precious little house, but I held back. Instead, I just typed out something simple. Maybe if they'd been there for me when I needed it, I'd be more inclined to help. There was a pause before he answered again. You're being childish. And that was it. It didn't matter what he said, because I knew one thing. I wasn't going to fall for their manipulation anymore. It had taken me a while to realize it, but I was done. I was done being the one to bend over backward while they walked all over me. But the real twist? The real reason they were going to regret this? They weren't done with me yet. Oh, no. They still needed something. Something big. And when they came crawling back, I would be ready. A couple of weeks went by, and I settled into my routine. Work, gym, Netflix, sleep. It wasn't glamorous, but I felt more at peace than I had in months. The guilt they tried to make me feel had slowly faded away, replaced with a quiet satisfaction. I had taken control. I had done what was right for me. But just when I thought I was safe from their drama, the storm hit. One afternoon, as I was finishing up a shift at the cafe, I saw a notification pop up on my phone. It was a message from my dad. I hadn't heard from him directly in ages. It read, "We need to talk. Urgently." I felt a knot in my stomach, the familiar anxiety creeping back in. I stared at the message, trying to figure out what was going on. It had been so quiet for so long, I was beginning to think they'd just given up on me. I was about to reply when another message came through, this one from Alex. It's about Grandpa's house, he wrote. Dad's asking for your help. I stared at the message for a long time. Help with Grandpa's house? What the hell did that even mean? I could already feel my blood pressure rising. They couldn't possibly be serious. I decided to call my dad. It rang a few times before he picked up. Jess, he said, his voice strained. We need to talk about something important. Dad, what's going on? I asked, keeping my voice steady, though I could feel my heart thudding in my chest. Look, it's a long story, but we need you to come by the house. There's something you need to know. Something urgent about the property. I felt a sudden chill. What do you mean urgent? We can't explain it all over the phone. You need to come in person. Why now? Why are you asking me for help again, after everything? I asked, my frustration creeping in. Please, Jess, he said, the desperation clear in his voice. Just come over. This is really important. I wanted to say no. I wanted to hang up the phone and tell them to figure it out themselves. But then I remembered the satisfaction of standing my ground before. Maybe, just maybe, this was the final test, and I was going to pass it with flying colors. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I just texted back, "I'll be there in an hour." I pulled up to my parents' house, gripping the steering wheel tighter than I needed to. I knew something was off. The whole urgent thing didn't sit right with me. If it were really that important, they would have told me over the phone. But I was curious to see just how far they would go to manipulate me this time. As I stepped out of my car, I took a deep breath, bracing myself for whatever nonsense they were about to throw at me. I rang the doorbell, and after a few moments, my mom opened the door with a wide, overly enthusiastic smile. "Oh, Jess, you actually came," she said, as if we hadn't just spent the last few months at odds. I narrowed my eyes. "Yeah, you said it was urgent." She waved her hand dismissively. Come in. We'll explain inside." I hesitated before stepping into the house. It smelled the same as always, vanilla candles and my dad's old cologne lingering in the air. It should have felt comforting, but instead, it made me uneasy, like I was stepping into a trap. I followed my mom into the living room, where my dad and Alex were already waiting. My dad was seated in his old recliner, arms crossed, looking annoyed. Alex sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone like he couldn't care less that I was there. I took a seat across from them. "All right," I said, cutting straight to the point. "What's so urgent?" My dad cleared his throat. "Well, first, we just wanted to see you, sweetheart. It's been too long." I let out a dry laugh. "Right. Because you were so desperate to see me that you couldn't just say that on the phone." My mom shot my dad a look, and he sighed. "Fine. We wanted to talk to you about Grandpa's house." I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. "What about it?" My mom gave me that saccharine smile she always used when she was about to ask for something unreasonable. "Well, we've been talking, and we realized that, maybe, we were a little unfair to you before." I blinked. "A little." She ignored my sarcasm and continued. "The thing is, Alex has been having a tough time keeping up with things at the house. There are property taxes, maintenance, and, well, he's just got so much on his plate. We thought that maybe you could step in and help." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. "Help?" "Yes," my dad chimed in. "We were thinking you could start pitching in financially, just to make sure everything is taken care of." I felt my jaw tighten. "Let me get this straight. You told me I couldn't live there when I needed a place to stay, but now you want me to pay for it? For Alex's house?" My brother finally looked up from his phone, rolling his eyes. "It's not just for me, Jess. It's for the family." I let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, now it's a family thing? That's funny, because when I needed help, I was told to figure it out." My mom sighed dramatically, like I was being the unreasonable one. "Jess, don't be like this. We made decisions that we thought were best at the time. But now, we really do need your help." I shook my head, feeling my temper rise. "No, you don't need my help. You need a scapegoat. You need someone to clean up the mess you made when you handed Grandpa's house to Alex without thinking it through." My dad leaned forward, his expression hardening. "Don't talk like that. This is about doing what's right for the family." I stood up, my heart pounding. "You mean doing what's right for Alex? Because let's be real, that's all this has ever been about." Alex scoffed. "Oh, come on, Jess. Stop playing the victim. You act like we threw you out on the street." I turned to him, my voice cold. "You did. Maybe not literally, but you sure as hell didn't care when I was struggling. You told me to figure it out. So guess what? Now it's your turn." My mom gasped. "Jess, that is not how family treats each other." I laughed. Actually laughed. "That's rich coming from you. Because when I needed my family, where were you?" "Oh, right. Too busy handing out free houses to my golden child brother." My dad's face was turning red. "That's enough." I grabbed my bag. "No, it's not. Because I'm done. I'm done playing this game where you guilt-trip me into being your backup plan. You made your choice when you told me I wasn't welcome. Well, now I'm making mine." My mom looked genuinely panicked now. "Jess, wait." I shook my head. "No, you don't get to control me anymore. You don't get to cherry pick when I'm part of the family." I turned to Alex. "You wanted the house? You got it. Good luck figuring it out." I turned on my heel and walked to the door, my heart pounding in my chest. "Jess, don't do this." My dad called after me. "We need you." I stopped at the doorway, turning back just enough to meet his eyes. "Yeah," I said. "And I needed you. Funny how that works." And with that, I walked out. I drove away without looking back, but the second I was alone in my car, I felt a wave of emotions crash over me: anger, frustration, maybe even a little sadness. Not because I regretted what I said, but because it confirmed something I had always suspected. I was never really part of their plans unless they needed something from me. After that, I went full no contact. Blocked their numbers, ignored their emails, and made it clear through mutual relatives that I was done. And you know what? It was the best decision I ever made. No more last-minute guilt trips. No more feeling like I was some disposable backup plan. From what I've heard, Alex is still struggling with the house. Turns out, property taxes and upkeep aren't as easy as having everything handed to you on a silver platter. My parents apparently tried to spin the story to make me look like the villain, but people caught on fast. Some of my extended family actually reached out to tell me they understood why I walked away. Honestly, I have no regrets. They made their choice, and I made mine. So, what do you think? Was I too harsh? Or did they finally just get a taste of their own medicine?